You know, I have spent the better part of my life watching people, really watching them. And I have come to understand something rather extraordinary about the nature of human perception. Most individuals believe they see the world as it truly is. They walk through their days convinced that their eyes show them reality, that their minds grasp the full picture. But this, my friends, is perhaps the greatest illusion of our time. There exists among us a small number of people who perceive something entirely different. They move through the same streets, sit in the same rooms, engage with the same individuals, yet they inhabit a fundamentally different universe. These are the ones I have come to recognize as spiritually awakened, though I use this term with great care, for it has been so terribly misused in our modern parlance. What do these people see that others cannot? This is the question that has haunted me for decades, the mystery I have pursued through countless hours of observation, conversation, and deep reflection. And what I have discovered will perhaps disturb you, for it suggests that most of us are living in a kind of waking dream, a collective hallucination so complete that we mistake it for truth itself. The awakened individual sees through what I have come to understand as the great masquerade of ordinary consciousness. While others perceive separate, disconnected events, the awakened person recognizes the invisible threads that weave everything together. They see the patterns that govern human behavior, the hidden motivations that drive our actions, the unconscious forces that shape our choices. But more than this, they perceive the profound interconnectedness of all things, the way in which every thought, every emotion, every action ripples outward into the collective fabric of human experience. Let me share with you what I have observed. When most people look at another human being, they see a separate entity, perhaps friendly or threatening, useful or irrelevant to their own concerns. But the awakened person sees something far more mysterious. They see themselves reflected in that other face, not metaphorically, but quite literally. They recognize that the anger in another person is connected to the anger within themselves, that the suffering they witness is part of a greater suffering that includes their own, that the joy and peace they encounter in others awakens the same qualities within their own soul. This is not mere sympathy or emotional sensitivity, though it may appear so to the casual observer. This is a fundamental shift in perception, a dissolution of the barriers that ordinary consciousness maintains between self and world. The awakened individual has somehow transcended what I call the illusion of separation, that deep conviction that we are isolated beings struggling alone in an indifferent universe. But here is where the matter becomes particularly fascinating. This expanded perception comes with a price that few are willing to pay. To see the world as it truly is means to see through the comfortable stories we tell ourselves about reality. It means recognizing that much of what we call civilization is built upon agreements to ignore certain truths, to participate in collective denial, to maintain illusions that make ordinary life possible. The awakened person can no longer participate fully in these agreements. They cannot pretend that the roles people play are who they really are. They cannot ignore the pain that hides behind social pleasantries. They cannot accept the surface explanations for human behavior when they can see the deeper currents flowing beneath. This creates a profound loneliness, a sense of living in exile from the common understanding that binds most people together. I have spoken with many such individuals over the years, and they often describe a similar experience. They feel as though they are watching a play in which everyone else is completely absorbed, while they alone can see that it is merely a performance. They understand that the actors have forgotten they are playing roles, that they have become so identified with their characters that they believe these personas to be their true selves. This clarity of vision extends into every aspect of human experience. In relationships, the awakened person perceives not just what is said, but what remains unspoken. They sense the fears and desires that motivate behavior, the wounds from childhood that continue to shape adult interactions, the unconscious patterns that repeat themselves generation after generation. They see how people project their own inner conflicts onto others, how they create enemies and saviors to avoid confronting the darkness and light within themselves. In society, they observe how collective beliefs and values are maintained not through conscious choice, but through unconscious agreement, how entire cultures can be gripped by mass delusions that seem perfectly rational to those within them. They recognize that what we call progress often masks a deeper regression, that our supposed sophistication frequently conceals primitive impulses and ancient fears. But perhaps most significantly, the awakened individual sees through the fundamental deception that keeps most people trapped in unnecessary suffering. They recognize that the search for happiness through external means, the pursuit of security through accumulation, the attempt to find meaning through social approval, these are all variations of the same basic error, the same failure to understand where true fulfillment actually lies. This perception creates both a blessing and a burden. The blessing is freedom from the compulsions that drive ordinary consciousness, liberation from the need to conform to expectations that serve no authentic purpose, the peace that comes from recognizing one's true nature. The burden is the responsibility that comes with such knowledge, the weight of seeing what others cannot see, the challenge of living authentically in a world that rewards pretense. The awakened person must learn to walk a narrow path between engagement and detachment, between compassion and discernment, between speaking truth and allowing others their illusions. They must find ways to remain connected to humanity while maintaining their clarity of vision, to offer help without forcing awareness, to embody possibility without demanding recognition. This is only the beginning of understanding what these remarkable individuals perceive. There are depths yet to be explored, mysteries that reveal themselves only to those willing to look beyond the surface of ordinary experience. What strikes me most profoundly about these awakened souls is how they perceive time itself. While ordinary consciousness experiences time as a relentless forward march, a series of disconnected moments strung together like beads on a thread, the spiritually awakened see something entirely different. They perceive what I have come to understand as the eternal now, the timeless dimension that exists within every passing moment. I recall sitting with a patient many years ago, a woman who had undergone what she described as a spiritual awakening following a period of great personal crisis. She told me something that has stayed with me ever since. She said that she could no longer experience the past as truly past or the future as genuinely future. Instead, she felt all of time existing simultaneously, accessible in the present moment through what she called a kind of inner vision. At first, I must confess, I wondered if she might be suffering from some form of dissociation, some psychological fragmentation that had disturbed her normal relationship to temporal reality. But as I listened more carefully, as I observed her manner of being in the world, I began to recognize something far more profound. This woman had somehow accessed what the mystics of all traditions have spoken of throughout history, that dimension of consciousness that exists beyond the ordinary flow of time. The awakened individual sees how the wounds of childhood continue to operate in the present moment, not as memories, but as living forces that shape current experience. They perceive how patterns established generations ago continue to play out in contemporary relationships, how the unconscious contents of the psyche exist in a realm where past, present, and future intermingle in ways that defy rational understanding. But this expanded perception of time reveals something even more remarkable. The awakened person begins to see what I can only describe as the archetypal dimension of human experience. They recognize that the dramas playing out in ordinary life are not merely personal, but are expressions of universal patterns that have repeated themselves throughout human history. When they observe a marriage in crisis, they see not just two individuals struggling with their particular circumstances, but the eternal dance between masculine and feminine principles, the archetypal drama of union and separation that has played out in countless forms across all cultures and all times. When they witness someone grappling with authority, they perceive the ancient struggle between child and parent, between freedom and security, between individual expression and collective belonging. This archetypal vision allows them to see beyond the surface details of any situation to the deeper mythological patterns that give it meaning. They understand that we are all living out stories that are far older than our personal histories, that our individual struggles are chapters in a cosmic narrative that began with human consciousness itself. Yet this profound seeing comes with its own particular form of suffering. The awakened individual often experiences what I might call the loneliness of the eternal. They feel themselves to be witnesses to dramas that others experience as ultimate reality. They see the temporary nature of all earthly concerns, the way in which today's crisis will pass, the way in which current joys and sorrows are but brief expressions of deeper, more enduring themes. This can create a sense of detachment that others find disturbing. The awakened person may appear calm in situations that drive others to desperation, not because they lack feeling, but because they perceive these situations within a much larger context. They see the forest while others see only individual trees, and this broader perspective, while ultimately liberating, can make them seem distant or uncaring to those still caught in the immediate drama of events. I have observed that such individuals often struggle with what to do with their expanded awareness. They feel responsible for sharing what they see, yet they quickly discover that most people are not ready to receive such perspectives. To tell someone in the midst of personal crisis that their suffering is part of an eternal pattern, that their pain serves a larger purpose in the unfolding of consciousness, this is rarely received as comfort. More often, it is experienced as invalidation or even cruelty. The awakened person learns, sometimes painfully, that truth must be offered carefully, delicately, and only when it can be received. They discover that their role is not to wake others up by force, but to embody a different possibility, to demonstrate through their very being that another way of perceiving and living is possible. This brings us to perhaps the most crucial aspect of their expanded vision. The spiritually awakened see not just what is, but what could be. They perceive the potential that lies dormant within every human being, the possibilities that remain unrealized, the wholeness that exists beneath the fragmentations of ordinary consciousness. When they look at someone trapped in destructive patterns, they see not just the pathology, but the health that is struggling to emerge. When they observe someone living a diminished life, they perceive the fullness of being that lies waiting to be expressed. This vision of human potential is both their greatest gift and their heaviest burden, for they must learn to hold this seeing without trying to force its manifestation in others. They begin to understand that consciousness itself is evolving, that humanity as a whole is slowly awakening from the collective sleep of unconscious existence. They see themselves not as separate or superior beings, but as early expressions of what all humans are slowly becoming. This understanding brings both humility and hope, for they recognize that their awakening is not their personal achievement, but part of a larger movement of consciousness that is stirring throughout our species. And so we come to the heart of the matter. What I have shared with you today is not merely observation, but invitation. For within each of us lies the capacity for this expanded seeing, this deeper perceiving. The spiritually awakened are not a separate species, not chosen beings gifted with special powers. They are simply human souls who have dared to look beyond the surface of things, who have chosen consciousness over comfort, truth over convention. Perhaps as you have listened, you have recognized something stirring within yourself. Perhaps you have felt the faint awakening of that inner eye that sees beyond appearances. This is no accident. The very fact that these words resonate, that this vision calls to something within you, suggests that your own awakening has already begun. The question is not whether you possess this capacity for deeper seeing. The question is whether you will have the courage to develop it, to bear the loneliness it may bring, to carry the responsibility that comes with expanded awareness. For once you begin to see what others cannot, once you glimpse the great interconnected web of existence, there is no returning to the comfortable blindness of ordinary consciousness. But know this, you need not walk this path alone. Throughout history, in every age and culture, there have been those who see beyond the veil, who perceive the deeper currents of existence. They are your brothers and sisters in consciousness, fellow travelers on the ancient journey toward wholeness. When you feel isolated by your expanded awareness, remember that you are part of a great invisible community of awakened souls, each contributing to the gradual enlightenment of our species. The world needs what you can see. It needs your clarity, your depth, your willingness to perceive truth even when it is uncomfortable. Not to force others to see, but to embody the possibility of a different way of being. To stand as a quiet reminder that consciousness can expand, that perception can deepen, that human beings need not remain forever trapped in the illusions that bind them. This is your calling, should you choose to accept it, to see clearly, to live authentically, and to serve as a bridge between the world as it appears and the world as it truly is.